It was a wild year, and it's funny because at that time I was really fueled by I need to prove myself to
Mm.
myself. I want to live up to my potential. I felt like I had no safety net, like I don't want to fail. And in my head, I was like, what makes me a real entrepreneur, quote unquote real, is I need to have $1 million in revenue and I need to have.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, Jess, I'm so excited to get to know you better. I want to ask you, who is Jess today, as a way to dive in?
Oh man, I love that question. I was actually at a dinner party recently, and one of the at a mastermind, and one of the questions was like, "Oh, what's your experience of like, what's the experience of being Jess like right now?" And I was like, oh, I love
Yeah.
this opener question. Um, so I guess Jess right now, I am the founder and CEO of two companies. So I have a marketing agency called LongPlay and a software company called Backbone. I have also recently really felt like I identify more as an artist than an entrepreneur, and like really leaning into that has been so beautiful. Because I think I'm really showing up more in alignment as like a leader in what I create, and like how I work, and also just having like so much more fun doing all of it as well, of like really being in a spirit of play and creation rather than necessarily building a business for the exit or for like the outcomes. I'm like, oh, I'm really enjoying the process of business building these days. So I guess that's just a very vague, broad
No,
answer
that's
to
great.
kind of start things off.
I am all about play and enjoying each moment and doing things with people you enjoy. And so I love that you're having so much more fun these days. And we're going to jump into all of that. But just for the audience, I'll give some context. You mentioned CEO of two companies. You've been building LongPlay for about 4 years now. I think you started when you were 22 years old. I can't wait to get into it. And it's a retention marketing agency for DTC companies. And then recently, this March, you launched Backbone, which is a B2B SaaS version of that. And so killing it, very self-aware, lots of effort being put into your own growth and development. I want to dial it all the way back to get to know young Jess and what some of her formative moments were growing up. Did you grow up in Toronto, first of all, or somewhere else?
Yeah, I grew up in Toronto. My parents still live in the same house that I was born in. So
Oh,
very stable, like solid suburban childhood. I think it was a beautiful childhood.
yeah,
And also went to university here as well.
beautiful. What were some of the things that you feel really contributed to the person you are today? Maybe the artist, maybe the woman that fell in love with entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember looking back, and in elementary school, I was just so average in the most average way possible. Where it's like got 70s and everything. Like nothing about me was like particularly remarkable, and somehow everything kind of shifted
Mm.
when I went to high school. And I think a lot of that has to do with one, like my parents were amazing with just letting me try new things, and they were not the tiger mom type parents where it's like you have to do piano now, you have to reach like whatever level 12 of the certification. They
Mm.
let me quit things if it didn't feel good anymore. I was trying everything, went to like magic camp, went to engineering camp, went to trampoline camp, so I think they really cultivated a base level of like self-awareness of just like how does this feel doing this thing, and like do you like it, that I think a lot of kids don't actually get to grow up with, and really just making my own decisions in like very little ways of just like what do you want to eat for dinner, like what do you want to make. I think that cultivated a lot of that like underlying self-awareness. And then in high school I had an amazing mentor, which was my high school teacher, in history class, and he was kind of like a second dad for me for a lot of years, and I think he really cultivated kind of like the dreaming bigger, because obviously like my parents, I'm like they're immigrant parents, they provided an amazing childhood, and also like there's a ceiling for like what they can see the world as. And Cody, my high school teacher, was this like expansionary person for me. And he was the first person who introduced me to this idea of like, hey, when you graduate, like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, wait, what do you mean you get to decide what you want
Yeah.
to do? You can just like, he's like, you can just take a year off. He like met his wife when he was went to Switzerland like to teach ski for whatever reason. I'm like, oh wow, like that really opened up this like very early seed idea of like designing my own life. Um, I think those were some of those like early formative people that were in just the environment I was in that was really conducive.
Where are your parents immigrated from?
Hong Kong.
Amazing. So I'm also an immigrant, and my husband is an immigrant. And I grew up in Sierra Leone and born in Ukraine and moved to the US for undergrad. So totally resonate with your parents there. And I think it's such a gift to have parents who allow us to choose our own journeys, right? And not be putting themselves on this child and expecting the child to grow up a certain type of way. Also, your history teacher just opening up a world of possibilities for you is huge. How did you take that into entrepreneurship, Jess?
It's funny, I feel like I don't have like a fun, sexy entrepreneur origin story.
It's not glamorous.
No, I'm like, I wish I had some like thing of like I was selling drugs in my college locker and like, or like I was finding all these opportunities that had a lemonade stand. I was like, no, I was actually like the perfect child and I had like perfect grades and like was very like doing the thing for a very long period of time. So I remember in high school I was like getting like mid high 90s and things, and I went to school for actuarial science, economics, and political science. So just very nerdy academic type stuff, and finished that degree. But it was actually, I'd say, like the catalyst of all of it was kind of midway through this degree. I was going through this period of panic attacks, depression, like suicidal thoughts, just like a really dark, like year and a half ish. And at that time, like no one was really talking about mental health. So I was like, I'm going crazy. This is like it's scary having suicidal thoughts for the first time where you're like, I don't understand what is happening, you know? Um, and I think it was in that like year and a half that eventually I kind of got out of it where I was like, I'm over this. Like clearly something just needs to change, but I didn't really know what that game plan was. So I just started doing things. So I was like, maybe I'll tinker around in UI UX design. Like maybe I'll test, like try coding. Maybe I'll start designing. Like I was like, I just need to do things. Like I started like a 30-day challenge for myself where I would just vlog every day, and just read every day, you know? So just started doing a bunch of things. And that was kind of when I started entering the world of like listening to Tim Ferriss podcasts and like Seth Godin books and just the idea of, oh, I can design my own life and I can like crawl my way out of this like stuckness that like hopelessness that I feel in my life. And that was kind of the catalyst of everything. And then that eventually led to a marketing assistant job at a company called Best Self Co. That's an e-commerce brand. And I was really fortunate that I got in. I was kind of working with them relatively early. I was working really closely with the co-founders. So that was kind of like my exposure to like direct exposure to entrepreneurship. And we were literally creating productivity tools for entrepreneurs. So it was a perfect intersection of all of that.
Can I pause you for a second here?
Yeah.
And can we maybe go back to your tough mental health period in college? And there's just so many people going through this. It's very common. And so just wanted to touch on what was helpful for you here in terms of realizing you needed to get help, and then what was helpful for getting out of that phase for you?
Yeah. Honestly, at that time, I don't even think I was really talking to like a true therapist that was like helpful because that would probably be the immediate solution now. At that time, I think I was talking to like a school counselor maybe, who kind of jumped to like maybe you just need some drugs and like antidepressant drugs. And I thank God I didn't kind of jump on that train because I think that would have brought me down a different path. But for me, it was really about kind of just ironically time blocking my day. So like my mentality was like, hey, I can't control how I feel, but I can kind of control what I do. Yeah. So I might wake up each morning kind of suicidal and hating everything, but I can just plan my day. So I'm like, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and read for an hour, like no matter what. And then from there, I'm going to go on a 2-hour run and listen to some podcasts. And then I'm going to publish a blog post every single day. And I'm going to work on this like random design project that I've like concocted for myself. And I'm like, I kind of almost split myself into like me and how I feel, and then like my boss. And I'm like, my boss tells me I have to wake up at 6 a.m. and do this thing. So I kind of just honestly got out of it by not thinking and dwelling in it too much and just starting to do things. And that naturally opened up a lot of doors because then I like found some curiosity or like books I really wanted to explore.
Yeah.
That was my way out.
Hearing you speak, it also coming back to designing our lives, it sounds like you designed around prioritizing mental fitness, hearing you waking up, taking some time to go for a run or read, and then publish a blog post / write, which can be a form of journaling and getting your thoughts to make sense to yourself. Does that feel resonant, the mental fitness?
Yeah, 100%. And I think also a lot of it is really just like not trying to tackle it all at once. Like you're not going to solve your entire life right now,
Yeah.
especially in that mental state. But like you can solve for like tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes like a week, and then a week becomes a month, and a month becomes a few years, and really just
Yeah.
taking it one step at a time.
Play one brick at a time. So helpful. And then I love that you were also designing around doing things that brought you joy. You mentioned this design project. You started to explore your curiosity, getting into Tim Ferriss. What impact, now looking back, do you feel those activities had?
It was so much fun, and also I think the big lesson there for me is the power of just following your own curiosity. So I instead of me sitting down saying like I'm going to be a UI UX designer now and like I'm going to find a job and take a course and do the thing. It's like I don't know if I'm gonna like it. Let me just start a I'm just literally just gonna invent my own project and like invent my own course and be like, I'm gonna redesign this website now. And then from that, I have to problem solve into like, how would I design a new website? Like, what blogs would I read? What is a good design? What is a bad design? So kind of creating my own learning curriculum in that way. And I think that is still how I approach entrepreneurship now, where it's kind of like, we're starting a software company. I guess I got to figure it out now, rather than let me
Yeah.
figure it out and then build it. So I'm a huge fan of kind of learning with your back pressed against the wall because you'll figure it out.
I love it so much. I'm also hearing this huge unlock that came for you, which is following your creativity or curiosity. For you, the fact that you can literally build something yourself and build it your own way and learn as you go.
Yeah, I think it's really that crazy idea, and I lean into even more now these days, is like you can create anything. You can change your entire life tomorrow, and you can change who you are tomorrow too. And I think that's actually one of the underlying elements that I kind of left out here is I remember at some point I was journaling and I just like redesigned myself.
Mm.
So I used to be lining up at coffee shops and having to like rehearse the order in my head because I was like so scared of like saying the wrong thing, and I was like the social anxiety was like crippling.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a math person, like this is how I operate. And I really just went down. I was like, how do I actually like who is the new version of me? And what do I need to do to like acquire these skill sets or like show up as this person? So I think designing your own life kind of goes beyond that. It's really just like redesigning who you are and really realizing like you can wake up tomorrow and decide that you're confident. Like that is
Yeah.
it. You can just wake up and decide that, and then now you're confident. Or like you can wake up tomorrow and decide like I love socializing, and now
Yeah.
that is who you are. So really realizing that you're never stuck in who you are. You get to continue evolving as you want.
Love it so much. And I know you're an introvert, Jess, and here you are as a CEO
It's
who's
so
needing
introverted.
to make sales calls. And so, speaking about social anxiety and waking up and deciding I'm going to be confident and designing around that, what are some of the things that work for you there?
Yeah, it's actually really well timed because last week I had like the most extroverted week of all time. I think I was literally around people like 16 hours a day. It was insane. It was great, but I think with introversion, I a lot of it has been around one realizing that like people don't think about you as much as you think they
Mm,
do because everyone's busy
mm,
thinking about themselves. Like if you
themselves.
just kind of think about how much you think about other people and spend time judging them, it's like probably minimal because you're so busy being anxious about like how people are judging you, and like that's everyone's experience. So that's like a very freeing thought in terms of like showing up. And the other thing is like really just being more comfortable owning like where I'm at energetically. Like I will literally be at events, be in the middle of a conversation and be like, hey, I'm really enjoying this conversation. My battery is running low. So I'm gonna go recharge literally in my hotel room alone for like 3 hours, and I'll come back out and I would love to continue the conversation. And people receive it really well. When you're just like being super honest with what it is versus in the past I would feel the battery running low, try to keep pushing through it, then I just start getting irritable. And then I'm
Mm.
actually showing up poorly. And then it feeds the social anxiety because I'm showing up poorly. So people are reacting to that, and it's this vicious cycle versus just knowing like, hey, I'm at this line where I'm like, I can no longer be present and show up as best as I can. So I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. Um, and I think those are probably the two biggest like mindset shifts.
That's a great one. And I think that's one that's hard for many folks to do because, again, of the social anxiety, feeling like I don't want people to think I'm weird, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you're telling yourself in your head. It's such a huge unlock again of just sharing who you are. Again, the power of vulnerability. People tend to receive that so well. When we open up, when we're brave about who we are, it's so refreshing.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where everyone is feeling it too, and when you say
Yeah.
it, like they then feel comfortable being more vulnerable with you too. So it actually tends to open up better conversation in general. And I've never gotten a negative response to be like, hey, my social battery is running low. I'm going to step out. They're
And
always
people
like,
are like,
wow, it's
no, you
amazing.
must
I love
stay.
that. Yeah, I've never gotten any sort of like weird judgmental vibe. Surprisingly, like I was nervous saying it the first time too.
Yeah.
That's been really great.
All right, Jess, coming back to your so you did marketing with this company, which was your first foray into entrepreneurship. And then how did you get started? I'm asking this because I think getting started is getting your foot in the game. How did you take that step? And what was helpful for
Yeah.
you?
So I think I'm trying to remember now, looking back. So I actually started as a marketing assistant. I remember getting promoted as a CMO within like 6 months. I was like, this is the most unqualified promotion of all time. And did that for a few years, but I think in that I started going to a lot of marketing or entrepreneur events and like different self-development type events, and would meet these entrepreneurs, and they would ask like, hey, you're the CMO, like how do you approach this, or like how is your email marketing set up, or like, and then I would just literally just teach them like at the event, and walk them through it, and then eventually it became like, oh, would you like be open to doing some consulting? It's like, sure, let's just say yes to everything. And then eventually the consulting was like, hey, could you just do it for me? And I'm like, sure. So it really was this process of like just saying yes to everything and letting things organically kind of unfold. And in the beginning with LongPlay, like I call it quote unquote LongPlay because it was the beginning of it, but it wasn't really a company yet. I was really just freelancing. I was doing everything. Like I did email, I like drafted a book, like was doing video scripts, content marketing, like literally everything. And eventually was just kind of honing in on emails, kind of like what I'm most excited about, and also I think it's the most scalable from a business standpoint because you can actually have more systems around it. And that was kind of the beginning of LongPlay, and eventually I actually hired a VA pretty early on, when I was making like five to 7 grand a month in revenue. Like it was like more freelancing than anything else. But hired a VA, and then eventually really just got to a point where, I had a team on the agency side and it wasn't sustainable for me to do both well anymore. And that was kind of when I left.
Amazing. And I know you scaled to $1 million of revenue within the first year. And so it sounds like a super smart decision that you started hiring and delegating to help you scale.
It was a wild year, and it's funny because at that time I was really fueled by I need to prove myself to myself. Like I want to live up to my potential. I I felt like I had no safety net. Like I don't want to fail. So it was really being driven from that place. And in my head, I was like, what makes me a real entrepreneur, quote unquote real, is like I need to have $1 million in revenue and I need to have like a team. So that was kind of like all
this
I was
was your
optimizing
vision.
for. Yeah, that was
Where
the
did you
vision.
get this vision, Jess?
I just need to make it. Like I just wanted to make it into like I deserve the entrepreneur title now. And that was just concocted in my head, at that time. No one was like imposing this on me. So I did it, but like the thing is like that $1 million is like it's a blip on a spreadsheet, and it doesn't really feel like anything. What I was feeling was the day to day of like the stress of I have $1 million thing as like I'm like barely holding it together. We have like 12 people, no real management systems. Like I was stressed out of my mind. And that I think that's why now I'm building the second company. Like the focus really is on like the process rather than these internally driven goals.
And learning from the management systems, those are hugely important, right? How are you tracking your goals and how are you managing your team most efficiently? Make sure that your team, every single person is performing at their best. What are some things you've learned that you're taking into your current company?
Yeah. So my greatest hack really is I have an incredible COO named Rachel. She pretty much runs the day to day of LongPlay of our agency. And I really realized that like I don't like management. I'm not good at management, and my team deserves good management, and that's just not me.
I
Like
hear
I'm good
that.
at leadership. I'm good at direction. I'm good at steering. I'm good at vision and building. I'm not good at maintenance in my both my personal life and my like professional life. I'm more of like a build it once, now it works, and like I'm done. So I think that's part of it where it's putting in the right people in place, um, who can translate vision and direction into goals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Rachel's really the driver behind like a lot of our org chart management systems, the day to day functioning of the company. Whereas like my job more so is to set like the container for all
Yeah.
that to exist and like set the culture.
Huge hack again for CEOs. It's so important to figure out what you're good at and then do that and delegate the rest out because it's going to be better for you. You're going to show up so much more capable and much, much better for your team. I want to come back to, you mentioned the $1 million was a blip, right? Because you were so focused on the rest of maintaining the company and having things be able to scale. I know recently you just shared a blog on Hampton about Backbone and the challenges with scaling there. I'm curious how you're making your finances work to date.
Yeah. So we kind of after hitting that $1 million in a blip, like that was probably like that was the rapid speed to revenue, but we were not crazy profitable. Like we should have been making way more money, should have had way more cash in the bank. Like I remember I was running to the bank on payroll day because I just finally got pay from like a client to go pay our team. So it was like on the outside, it was like, wow, there's all this stuff happening. But on the inside, I was like, this doesn't feel good. And that was when a little while after that was when I brought on Rachel and we shifted all of our focus over to profitability and sustainability and getting me out of the day to day. And that mindset shift and business shift is really what allowed us to finance Backbone, which is our software company, and Bootstrap, all of that. So now we've like I don't even really look at our revenue numbers too much. Like I look just so I don't sound like a total idiot
Mm-hmm.
on when I'm in conversation. But like none of our strategic decisions are really made off of revenue. It's actually made off of profitability. So it's always like what's our profit numbers? Like how's our team? Is it sustainable? What's our capacity? Those are the real numbers that we should be focusing on. Yeah, and then we fully bootstrapped our software company, which is like a 6-figure investment there, and that's still very early stage and like it's not really bringing in significant revenue yet, but we're starting to see that early traction.
What are some of the hardest things you've had to go through as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, one of the wildest stories is we had like the business equivalent of the Tinder swindler in our business.
What?
So I brought on this creative director. I'm not gonna say we because it was a fully me thing. This was before Rachel. So I brought on this guy who was our creative director. He had experience in previous agencies. He was like in his 40s, more experienced. And I was like, this is great. Came on, like, was great with clients, was great with a team. Things were good for like a year or so. Um, then just like weird stuff started happening, where we started getting like a bunch of no notice like resignations from team members. There was like, a lot of like and like essays of emails on these terminations of like this is a toxic culture. Well, I was like I'm genuinely so confused. Like I'm so open to all the feedback, but I'm so confused. And like no one was giving us any. Like I couldn't figure out what I was like. I mean, I was a terrible leader. Like I don't know what's wrong. Long story short is we found out that he was in our local newspaper with like 85 counts of fraud. He actually looks for women and like would get like date them, get engaged, and defraud like landlords, defraud them on leases and all this stuff.
Wow.
And turns out he had a fake name, but like how it was affecting our business was like he was gaslighting the crap out of our entire team. So he would,
Okay.
for example, take a low level, like a junior designer, let's say, and be like, hey, like I think you deserve like a 2x pay raise. I'm gonna go try to fight for it. And then he would come to
What?
me and be like, this guy wants a 2x pay raise. That's so ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, that is ridiculous. Like, where does this come from? He's like, I don't know. And then And then
Oh
he
my
would put
gosh.
us like, he's like, I think we need level set calls. So we go on these level set calls, and I'm coming in thinking this kid is just requesting a 2x pay raise. He's like doing this thing, and then this kid is obviously super confused because he was told he deserved. So all this stuff was happening where it was just like crazy levels of gaslighting. And I think he was trying to get towards like, I almost gave him equity, you know. But that was probably one of the hardest periods where I was like,
How did you figure
I
it
don't
out?
know what is real.
Yeah, that's horrible. How did you figure it
It
out?
was a crazy period because I was like, I don't know what is real. I don't know who is good, who is bad. Like information's coming in left, right, and center. I can't tell who's telling the truth.
And on
Um,
top of that, you're building a company and
yeah,
you you're building and flying a plane. And then on top
yeah,
of that, you're like, what's
and I'm like
happening?
23, 24 is my first business. I'm like, I have nothing
Right.
to calibrate. I'm like, is this normal? Is this just growing pains, or is something like very disastrously wrong, or am I just a really bad entrepreneur? Like, there's nothing. Whereas, like now, if it happened again in a second company, I'd be like, okay, this is like
Yeah.
an issue. Um, but
So
that
was
was actually
Rachel who helped you figure it out or okay.
yeah. So Rachel was actually here, and that was like a lot of the source of conflict because she was just trying to do her job. She's like, I'm trying to build a real sustainable company, and he is like gaslighting the crap out of everyone. So I was like, is she the one to keep? Is he the one to keep? Like, I don't
Oh no.
just
Yeah.
these insane judgment calls. And I think when it really comes down to it, it's like listening to your gut. And like for whatever, like every sign pointed to I should let Rachel go. Like she's not a good culture fit. Every sign pointed to that. And to this day, I'm like, it was pure gut instinct of like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna keep her around. And like thank freaking God because she is amazing. Um
So
and
did it come down to something in particular that helped you pinpoint that or
I think it was so I don't know. I think it was just this like intuitive, like maybe
yeah.
we're picking up on integrity or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Because it wasn't about skill set. It wasn't about like behavior, saying the right things. It was more about like the essence of the person of like, do I trust this person to my core? And I think at the end of the day, I was like, I trust her for whatever reason, even though like there's no reason I should from an external standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, and I think
That
loyalty is just really loyalty and integrity are so important in a business. Like you should optimize for that over
yeah.
skill sets any day.
Yeah, that's why culture building, you got to start from day zero. It like cement, it dries really fast and it's hard to change once you've
Mm-hmm.
gotten started. So I'm so happy you got to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm so glad you got out of it. Also, now you probably have so much more exposure to people and patterns, etc., where you have a much better intuition.
Yeah, I think we'll have a better read. And also, like one of the rules we actually have now is like if we ever hire for like director or like C-suite positions, that we have to meet them in person for a few
Yeah.
days because there was like one director that we hired that she was with us for a while, and then it was like just wasn't working out very well. And then we met her in person. We're like, oh my god, this is like weird energy.
Yeah.
We would have picked up on that instantly if we did that during the hiring process. So that's actually a new rule that we have in place, which I think
Yeah.
is great.
Okay, let's turn this around. Tell me a fun story, Jess. What's a
Fun
high?
story. A highlight. Let me think. Oh man, I'm more so thinking about like all the different things I have to choose between. I
Great.
guess one of the highlights, just kind of top of mind, is very early on. I went to an entrepreneur mastermind called Baby Bathwater. They do a yearly event in Croatia, which is like it's literally like a private island in Croatia with like 200
Hmm.
entrepreneurs. And looking back, I remember it was like such a big swing because it was like I was like 3 months out of like being that CMO job, barely like a
Mhm.
baby of an agency. And each of these tickets were like 10 grand, let alone like the flights and all that type of thing. And I just kind of showed up with like no game plan of like, I'm just going to meet new people. And like,
Yeah.
that just felt important for me to be there. But it ended up being like the greatest event. I would say like I built the business off of it because I got like the first 7 or 8 clients that eventually like fueled all of our word of mouth. I met some of my best friends there. Met people that I'm still like very, very close to. And I
Are
think that was
these are
when I
entrepreneur
really,
friends?
yeah, and I think that was when I really understood the power of like relationships in entrepreneurship. Like you really cannot do it alone, whether it's team or whether it's a network, and they have to be friendships. It's not about having like a great like roster of people that you can know, say, you know, but it's like really like who's going to be there for you and like lift you up
when you're low.
when you're alone, but also like hype you up when you're doing well, and like who can you call who will like
Yeah.
connect you to anyone you know, like it's true friendships. And I don't know how I would go through the entrepreneur journey without that. That's honestly like one of the reasons I love doing all of this so much.
And I love entrepreneurs. I feel like a different breed of folks too, because it's like the thing they get it, right? And the things they will do for you because they
Yeah,
get it. They know what it's like. You're
yeah.
always trying to sell or figure things out or like understand your customer and just make things work with very like too few resources. And they just totally understand it. It's just such a meaningful, deep kind of connection. I'm so glad you found that really early in your journey.
Yeah, I find entrepreneurs, I'm like, they're just so weird and I freaking love it. Like, I
Yeah,
always say, like,
very different.
entrepreneurs, I'm like, everyone is a psycho. That's like, well, why we're in this like top 1%. I was like, there's no reasonable reason that we should be starting businesses. Like, all of us could make more money, getting a 9 to 5 job corporate somewhere. It's like, why did we decide to put ourselves through this? And I love the weirdness of that. And
Yeah.
also because of that, there's always like this grit and like I love seeing like with entrepreneurs, there's always like certain things that like just make them light up. Like there's a lot more like passion and just like light in their eyes and like just that excitement for life that I think is really like just amazing to be around.
Yeah. And for me, it comes back to something you said earlier. Everything you've seen has been built by someone else who may not be smarter than you. And so you can totally build something yourself as well. And just having this
Mhm.
explorer mindset of we're going to go and figure things out on our own. I want to come back, Jess, to your life today. Like, what are you spending your time on? Tell me about this art. How are you designing today?
I have actually spent the last like I'd say like 4 or 5 months in particular really focused on kind of designing myself. So I was like really deep in inner work stuff. And I was obviously still working full time and like working on building the businesses, but like from an energy and like a psychic standpoint, I've been really focused on that. And a lot of the somatic work specifically. But this last week, I'm like, oh, I feel the shift. Like now we're back into like grind. Like it's go time and I'm ready and I'm like back in flow and super exciting to like be in that like early stage entrepreneur founder kind of energy again. And really just focusing on building backbone, which is really fun, but also I think a lot of my like quote unquote personal brand stuff and like the Diary of an Entrepreneur series and content stuff is just kind of naturally taking off. And I think that's actually been a really beautiful reminder for me that when I'm creating things that are in alignment and feel like play and is art for me, like those are the things that get traction, the fastest. And like this Diary of an Entrepreneur series on Twitter is like out of all the things I've ever like planned for or like ideated and strategized around, like this one is the one that got traction the fastest, has had like the most positive feedback, and is the thing that I put the least thought into because it's just so natural for me. So I think that's been a really beautiful, like fun side thing that has taken off.
Because it's valuable. You're sharing your actual true insights, which so few people open up the curtains to. So thanks for doing that.
I appreciate that.
I gotta ask, speaking of Twitter and speaking of designing lives, about partnership. And I know that you just got put on Sam's dating, I don't even know what to call it. How is that going?
Single dating
And
thread.
any interesting hits? How's it going?
I'm so glad you're asking me about this because now I have a platform to like say how I really feel about this.
Say it. Tell us.
Because I'm like, I can't tweet about this, but no, it was super fun. I mean, honestly, I'm like, so for me personally, I'm like, I don't do dating apps or anything like that. So like, I kind of just like, my approach to dating is like, I'm gonna work on myself and
Yeah.
live my best, like live my dream life. I'm like, if my life was this way for the rest of my life, I would be a pretty happy camper. And then the right person will just naturally kind of appear when I'm doing everything I love. So that was kind of my approach. But with Sam, I'm like, he's just a fun dude. And he was like, do you want in on this? I'm like, sure. Like, let's just play and just see what happens. Like, there's nothing, I have zero expectations from this. But also like there's no downside. Let's just play around with this. So it was super fun. Yeah. Definitely got a lot of DMs.
Anyone interesting, Jess? Anyone that you'll go on a date with?
No. No. But that's okay. Honestly, I also realized like I'm really not great at texting. I always joke, I'm like, I can barely text back like people I love, let alone
You're just not
the
a
start of a
texter.
relationship. No, I'm like, I want to be present. I want to
Yeah.
be with people in person.
Are you a caller? Do you talk on the phone more?
I do a lot of phones, and also do a lot of voice memos. So
Mm,
I've converted a lot of people over to the dark side on voice memos because I'm like, it's the perfect in
I'm a
between
voice
of
memo girl,
text
so
and phone calls.
I like
So
that you can just share so much more. You can share the tone. You can just like communicate so much more. It's great. And I'm
oh,
also
totally.
very much a
A lot of
caller.
my a lot of my text threads, I'm like, it's just 20-minute long voice memos back and forth
Oh,
with
wow.
like my good friends, and I'm like, I love this. Like 20-minute voice memos
20
regularly.
minutes a
It
lot.
makes me feel like you're always together. It's great.
That's great. Okay, so then I'm so curious, what is like Jess looking for in a partner? Do you feel like you know? What have you learned across this process and what are you designing for?
This is so not where I expected the conversation to go, but I'm here for it. I'm open. What am I looking for in a partner? I'm looking for someone who's kind of on their own inner work journey. So I don't need
Yeah.
someone who's like, I don't want to fix anyone. I don't want to like coach or mentor anyone in a relationship, which is what I find I've had in the past sometimes. And I also don't need someone who's like growing for me. You know, it's like they're on their own growth journey, like they're on their own path. And I love that. And it's really about like two wholes coming together rather than like two halves like clashing together to try to make a whole.
Yeah.
So I want someone who is also just living like their life and like they have already built a life that they love. They're already doing everything that they love. They are working on themselves for themselves,
Yeah.
and for us to kind of come together in that way, I think is really important. Um, that's
Super
probably like
healthy.
one of the most important things. And honestly, to me, like most things, the rest of it doesn't really matter. Like there's definitely some like lifestyle alignment in terms of like travel and like sleep schedules. Like I think some of those are basic type things. Um,
Yeah.
as well as like, you know, my guess is I'll probably end up with an entrepreneur just from like a straight up like lifestyle mindset standpoint, but that's not necessarily like a deal breaker or criteria or anything like that. But
Awesome. And make sure to call Jess, guys.
yes,
Don't
I
no
like in
texting.
presence, just like let's text once and just make plans rather than like 10 days of texting. I'm not that person.
Love it. I love that you're owning who you are. It's such a beautiful thing to see, and you have so much power in you. I want to end with what are a couple of tools or frameworks that you employ today that help you perform at your best? You mentioned you've been doing a lot of internal work. We talked a little bit before about mental fitness, and we talk about you now building again from 0 to 1. So, what are some things that help you perform here at your best that you can share for others to steal?
So I do a kind of morning meditation that has been really important for me, and it's a little bit different in the sense where it's really about like tuning into like my yeses and nos. So I actually do 30 minutes of a meditation. It gets split into four sections, I guess. And then the first section is really just breathing and like monitoring my breath. But the practice there is to shift between the mindset of breathing, like being the active first person in breathing, versus being the thing that is breathed. So that helps me kind of shift into operating at a higher level of consciousness in my day of like, hey, when things come up in my day and like there's triggers, someone says something like, how do I not be in it and be a player in it, but really like zoom out and like be the chessboard and like see myself in third person and be able to manage the situation. So that's been like a huge practice for me. Um, Second thing is really meditation around like feeling into like my yeses and my nos. Like what does a like hell yes look like and feel like? What is a this doesn't feel correct for me feel like? And I've really been living in a place of like it's either like F yes or no. Um and if it's not a hell yes, then like I don't need this in my life anymore. So that's been really big. And the third part of the meditation is actually just kind of like pulling in like and really being clear on like what I'm the life I'm trying to build and like who I want
Mm-hmm.
to be and like really feeling into that. But let me live that now and like understand what that life would feel like. And the last one is really just kind of like seeing what kind of comes in. Um, so I think that meditation has been really important. I've really been focusing too on like living in a place of like high. The slogan that came up was essentially high standards, low expectations,
Mm.
specifically around like partnership and dating, but like also broadly in life as well. Is like I hold my standards high, like what I let in my life, but I also don't impose that on other people. Like I don't need to have expectations on the people, and it's totally fine for everyone to show up as they are. I just decide whether I let that into my own life as well. So that's been really great. And just other basics are like just time blocking my day has been really big for me these days too.
Thanks, Jess. Also, shouting out your COO. Sounds like this was super useful to you as well.
Yes. Find the right team. Like
Yeah.
you cannot do it alone. The hero's journey is I always find the hero's journey is an interesting concept because it makes it like very singular of like the founder, the entrepreneur is like on this hero's journey, but it's like you're not really the hero. Like you are more so like the storyteller. Like you're meant to like pull everyone together. And if you make yourself the hero, then like that's just not a way to win in the long term, in my
It
perspective anyway.
takes a village.
It really takes a village.
Jess, this was so great. I
It was
love
so
spending
much
time with
fun.
you. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave a review and share.